had to live at home. I wasn't allowed to dorm. I lived this life where I had to fit in line and just play the mold and do what I'm supposed to do. And then I joined the military right after 9/11.
Meet Krystalore Cruz. She's been facing adversity since the moment she could walk. She's been through a variety of health challenges and career fields, including serving in the Air Force for 21 years. Thank you for your service, Krystalore.
I spent 6 months in a wheelchair. I couldn't even get my feet on the ground to get out of bed. I know what it's like to not have my legs, so I don't take that for granted. I did not have my own thoughts until COVID, and I had to get a coach, and I remember ugly crying. She said, "Enough of the cute memes and other people's quotes. You have your own voice." She challenged me, and she said, "You're not going to reach anyone with other people's quotes. You have your own thoughts. It's time."
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of Flipping the Lid. You know that we go deep into stories. We love to unpack and really flip the lid inside those individuals that are having impact and have created success in the world. We know that the things that bond us are the stories that happen through our lives, the unique human experience, and how we go and navigate in whatever's thrown at us. And the woman that we have here today has faced a lot. She's someone that really has reached the highest of high level in multiple different industries, served our country in the Air Force for 21 years, and thank you for your service, but has also been an NFL cheerleader, someone who is committed to pushing the limits of their physical self and understanding by doing things like marathons. This person understands pain, and they've dealt with cancer and a variety of other things, yet in their health and wellness focus and how they're helping people move, they're literally helping them cruise beyond limits. So Krystalore, I am so excited to have you here today, and I'm grateful for Jake for introducing us.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
So the only question that I ask every guest is that I just introduced you based on the little I know about you, the little bit of interaction we've had, but I always like to have you tell us who you are in your words.
Yeah, so I am a wife, a daughter, a friend, a stepmom. I wear many roles and many hats, but as a coach, a mentor, a consultant, I'm really on a mission to help empower every person on the planet put themselves and their health first for just 34 minutes a day to reduce the stress and overwhelm of life and live a more fulfilling life. And I've been, like you said, been through a variety of different health challenges, variety of different career fields, and in the military, I have been facing adversity basically since the day I could walk. And, it's been a wonderful journey. And, every day I just try to be better than yesterday.
I love that. I want to ask one really specific question. Why 34 minutes?
Because I have my bags are always packed, been in the military, traveling all over. My husband also serves, and we have moved 4 times in the last 6 years. And so getting to a gym and sticking to a routine has always been a challenge. And traveling, we're always working out of hotel rooms and airports. And our military day typically starts really early. So getting to a gym and, spending 3 hours is it's hard. And so I developed a system to be able to start with gratitude and goal setting in a journal, which I published, and then do 30 minutes of a workout. So from a hotel room, from a kitchen, from a living room, from anywhere. And so I teach high intensity interval training and kickboxing. And then, but at least just do 30 minutes of movement, and then 2 minutes of reflection and deep reflection and celebration at the end of each day. So that's been like my 34-minute mindset, that at least I stay focused to my goals and my relationships and the relationship that I have with myself each and every day.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in consistency and persistency and finding that time to reflect in multiple of the categories that you just outlined in your 34-minute structure. And the reality of it is it does give us strength. It gives us the ability and the endurance. It gives us the focus to be able to continue to take a step forward each and every day, despite and whatever is thrown at us. You said you've been facing adversity from the day that you started to walk, basically. Give us a little bit of perspective into some of the early adversity that you faced and how you believe that impacted you.
Yeah, so I think, kind of growing up, I was always a dancer. So I started dancing as soon as I could walk. And then I was a cheerleader, a dancer, a runner. And I was always in kind of a singular sport where I had to be on and I had to perform. And then pair that with joining the military, and then growing up through college. I was the oldest of my siblings, my brother and I, and I had to just really be on all the time and perform. And I was constantly being a high performer, just growing up through life. And it wasn't until when I faced a really big identity crisis later on, when I met my husband, we had to move away. I realized that I didn't have a voice, and I had been suppressing like really my own thoughts and dreams and emotions because of all the things that I had been through. And so when I opened up and flipped open the lid and I started to unpeel the layers of what was happening in my body and in my life, I started to realize like I actually have a voice, and I never got to really use it. And we had Cliff Notes. I'm probably dating myself. Cliff Notes in high school. I didn't really read a lot of books. I didn't really have my own thoughts, and nor was I really able to share them. And so now you can't get me to shut up. So it's been quite a journey.
Well, I mean, what you just outlined too is not a dissimilar pattern from a lot of high performers in this world, right? There's an expectation, whether it's stated or not, of your role to help care for your siblings that are younger than you, to show up, to not make an issue, to make yourself small in certain moments, right? And what do we learn to do in those? We learn to read rooms, we learn to read people so that we can literally avoid potential conflict and any disruption that might happen in our environment. And you just also highlighted on something that is such a common pattern, right? Even dancing and how it started to transfer for you. So many high performers have learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, which actually further disconnects us. When did you become aware that it was actually the actions and the performance and how you were showing up that was actually keeping you further apart from who you were and who you wanted to connect with?
It started when everyone would say, oh, there she is getting another award again, getting another medal again. There she is bragging again. And it was only a select few people that would spend some time with me and start asking questions like, hey, why do you run so much? And I just kept going and going, improving myself and performing and reaching that next level. And I never really stopped to smell the roses. And it wasn't until some people, really powerful people, and they call them my angels in my life, that said, hey, you're always that person and that bubbly person and the high performer, showing up for everyone else. Why do you do what you do? And what I started to recognize is I wasn't sharing a lot of my stories of my resilience earlier on. In the middle of my NFL career, my body shut down, and I spent 6 months in a wheelchair. That ended my military, or almost ended my military career, but it ended my NFL career. And they tried to figure out what was wrong with me. I was in a toxic relationship, not only with the person I was living with. It was an abusive relationship, mentally and physically. And, really my body just completely shut down. And in those moments, I had to work with my doctors because they tried to kick me out of the military. I could no longer walk, let alone run, let alone ever dance or perform again. I had to take chemotherapy and tons of medication. I had ulcers. I gained so much weight. I just lost myself completely. And I started researching and getting help, asking for help. But I didn't really tell a lot of people because I didn't feel safe. And, and I didn't want to feel weak either. And so it wasn't until a couple people started asking me, well, why do you run so much? You should slow down. Your knees are going to hurt. You're going to be sorry someday. I'm like, well, you didn't know this, but I spent 6 months in a wheelchair. I couldn't even get my feet on the ground to get out of bed. I had to fall out of bed to start crawling. I know what it's like to not have my legs and to not be able to do that. So I don't take that for granted.
You know, you embedded so many beautiful things in that answer, and so far in our discussion, it's just amazing the patterns that exist for so many high performers, right? I mean, we teach the concept of the human experience, which is that we all seek and desire to feel safe, protected, seen, understood, and connected. And the reality of it is, the second we don't feel safe, we tend to protect ourselves, right? We hide behind the armor, we bury whatever's going on inside, right? I fit a very similar pattern and description to all of what you've outlined so far. You know, it's often those moments as well that we don't feel safe or protected that take our voice away the fastest. Can you give some insight to either the conscious or unconscious things about your childhood that led to the pattern of you losing your voice?
Yeah, so I think, my father, my parents divorced when I was 6, and I'm the oldest of 2. And so my mom kind of raised us. And then, so for me, it just, there is a level of abandonment that I'm still, still processing. Right. But then, my mom remarried, and she married an amazing man who was my stepfather, who I call my father now. But I ended up, had to go to college. I had to live at home. I wasn't allowed to dorm. I kind of lived this life where I had to fit in line and kind of just play the mold and do what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. And then I joined the military right after 9/11. And so I was always seeking validation, I think, through performance, really like, and then in the military, we had to check our feelings at the door, not have emotions. We had to show up in uniform with military bearing. And it wasn't until recently where we really kind of are breaking down some of those tough outer shells and recognizing that we do have a human experience. And that's actually what I do in the military. Is, I'm a diversity and inclusion consultant. So
I love that.
I do leadership. And so I do recognize that people do need to feel seen and valued and heard and respected and like they belong. And there were times in my life where I didn't feel that. And so I would always, as a woman in the military, for 21 years, I didn't always feel like I could share all that emotion because I didn't want to be too emotional. And so there were many times where I didn't feel like I had a voice. I didn't feel like I had a seat at the table. I didn't feel like I belonged. And I'm 4'11 3/4, NFL cheerleader, high energy. And people would tell me, no, you're going to sit in the corner and you won't speak until you're spoken to. And like people have actually told me that, or I can't talk to you before 9 a.m. or unless I've had 2 cups of coffee. Go over there and, don't say hi to me until I'm ready for you. So it's no wonder why for many, many years, I didn't feel like I had a voice, and, then just kept performing and performing and performing and more awards and more marathons. And then it wasn't until till I moved away and I started my business where I was like, holy cow, there's a whole lot more to this puzzle. And I'm still working on it every single day, trying to piece it all together.
Yeah. Well, there is no final destination, only constant evolution of self. I appreciate you even identifying a quick pattern of abandonment that exists for you being able to understand the ramifications of what that can have, how the ripple effect comes down to your voice. It's fascinating because I've had other veterans on the show, but it has not gone down the path of understanding the internal game for our soldiers. And something that I've talked about for a number of years is that the 1940s field book for the military had about 140 references to the human experience and the emotional side, right? Understanding how we're processing things, what we're doing. The most current field book, to my knowledge, has 0 references. It's situational leadership, strategic leadership, organizational leadership. It's almost as if we, even as a society, have removed permission for us to be human and have to operate as machines and soldiers as if we don't feel, when that's one of the core elements of being human. In your 21 years in the military, and I want to be really clear here, I don't expect you to be the voice of the military. I don't expect you to any of that. But I'm curious what patterns you've witnessed being in the military connected to how we're caring for our soldiers and really supporting them through the more dark elements of what it means to serve.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I think we've done a really great job is building our leaders through a foundation of emotional intelligence. And this is really in the last 6 years that I've recognized.
Like this last window. Yeah, like really recent.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think this is just opening up a lot of conversation, which I think is great. It is getting some kind of pushback because we still have a mission, right? And there is there's an element where you have to move fast, and then you don't have time to ask questions. And so a lot of times it has to be, it has to be fast. And a lot of times the human element, it's like, you just got to move. And so that sometimes that does take a back seat. But I think for us to be effective as any team in any environment, military or not, recognizing that there is a human experience and getting to know people, what I say, below the surface. The game changed for me when people started asking me, why do I run? Why am I getting all these awards? Why am I so driven? Why are you so energetic? There's a reason, and everyone has a story. And until you spend 5 minutes with me, then you won't judge and you won't be like, oh, there she is, that cute runner girl. Like, she can't possibly have work ethic as well. Get to know them. And, I think that has just lended so much growth opportunity for people to connect on a deeper level. And I think that helps with conflict, a lot of miscommunication, especially with technology now and social media. There's so much, and we have attention spans of a gnat. And so, the human brain, as I've continued to study it, it is just so powerful to know how quickly we can snap judgments. And the brain wants like that quick, easy route of like, okay, this person's safe, this person's not, this person is this, and that's all I know. And when we kind of challenge that by getting to know each other and connecting on a deeper level, I think that is a game changer. And the more we do that, the more powerful and more lethal we'll be.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. We're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as we can by helping reduce the level of suffering that exists on this planet, right? We've got a core concept that we teach people how to embrace pain to avoid suffering. I see the word suffer on your shirt. What does that actually say below it? Because
it says,
I suffer from chronic ambition.
Yes.
Okay. I love it. Okay. I love the spin on the suffer from that. That's amazing. I think my wife has a similar thing. She suffers from I think it's called catitis. There's got to be a cat sitting in her lap at all times or she can't function. So it's funny. I love that. You so eloquently talked about this level of internal suffering that you were existing in and the amount of action you were taking to keep yourself moving forward, to, in some ways, even potentially numb and avoid some of the pain that was happening that you may not have even been conscious of. When your body shut down and you're in a wheelchair and you're having to all of a sudden redefine what your physical self looks like after years of dancing, performing, running, all these things in a physical sense, now all of a sudden it's all gone. What were you experiencing at that time? And what were the intellectual and emotional narratives that were just present for you in those moments?
Yeah. So I think depression is the first thing that kind of hits home. And, identity loss on multiple levels. Right. And so I was stripped. Naked and afraid is the best way I can describe it. On an island, completely alone, and with your own deep, dark thoughts. Oh, and by the way, you are alone. And I was, at least. And it wasn't, back then, we didn't have Dr. Google. We didn't have really the internet. It was 2005, right? And so my mom, bless her, she is my best friend and amazing. She's my hero. And she gave me this book, Arthritis for Dummies. And I read Arthritis for Dummies, the yellow and black book, right? It's something for dummies, right? And so I started to recognize and really learn what was happening inside my body. And so I think one of the themes that I've recognized amidst any crisis, trauma, identity loss, challenges, breakdowns, breakthroughs, we tend to lose control. And the more that we can, in order to regain some control, sometimes we have to educate. And so for me, I started to educate myself because I was an NFL cheerleader and a dancer, and I'm 4'11 3/4. I'm a small human. So work out for 4 or 5 hours a day and eat pizza and not really fuel my body properly. I was putting stuff in, and I was putting bad energy in too, I noticed. Toxic relationships and toxic energy. I didn't realize the whole mind, body, spirit, all of that connection until it shut down and I had nothing left. I'm like, okay, well, what is my nervous system? What is my nutrition supposed to look like? What is inflammation? And how does stress and depression and mental health impact my physical being? And like, I thought I didn't realize until then. And it was a young age of 22. So, I mean, I'm grateful for that because I really got to learn that nice and early, how to rebuild myself from the core and really recognize my values. I walked away from a very toxic, abusive relationship, not only with the person I was living with, but with myself, by just regaining myself from the core, rebuilding that control again.
Yeah. And it's interesting because control can often be armor and protection as well, because we can have an easy tendency to over control, right? A lot of high performers, a lot of people who've suffered from shame, right? Whether it's running a variety of marathons or controlling everything that I'm eating or whatever, sometimes control can actually be protectionary and armor. The way you discuss the integration of the mental, emotional, and spiritual self is so on point. When I shut off physical pain, because it exceeded my ability to cope when I was 7, I shut off emotional pain, mental pain, and spiritual pain for 20 to 25 years and didn't even know it. And it was only through understanding that every one of those pieces has a direct correlation to my physical health. And so what you just so clearly articulated, and we say all the time, I believe that our bodies will always point us at what's important if we're paying attention. If we allow ourselves to get in our bodies, I think it's important and necessary for us to feel in order to heal. We have to be able to allow those 40,000 brain-like cells called sensory neurites to have the embodied and associated emotion so that their memory can now go away and they can heal. Was it all at the age of 22 that your clarity and understanding of this came to place? And I was assuming it was a no, but the question would be, what was the next 10 to 15 years? And what did the progression of further understanding yourself in each one of these categories look like?
Yeah, so I got out of that toxic relationship. The answer is no. And it wasn't until 6 years ago, really, where I was studying the brain and emotional intelligence because my position was to train this course. So I had to go through a lot. And so I started to really recognize it wasn't so weird. Everything that I had been through had meaning to it. And there was actually something that was happening inside my body. And I started to understand it through the triggers that were happening daily, right? And so when I started to unpeel the layers of like, okay, this is actually normal human behavior and psychology, and how our body processes, like your palm sweating, you're going to feel it first, right? And so I was like, oh, that's normal. I'm not weird. I'm like, I really felt like I never belonged because I've been through so much stuff. And I'm like, I'm a freak of nature. Even the doctors called me a freak of nature. They still do to this day because I've just been through so much. And they're like, how are you still doing all of this and enduring all of this? And it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. I'm like, well, that's just what I'm used to. But it wasn't
my life.
Yeah. And that's my normal, right? Is abnormal. And I'm used to being more uncomfortable. But I didn't piece it together until I started learning emotional intelligence, right? And it wasn't until I was stripped again in 2017. I met the man of my dreams, and he broke all of my rules. He'd been in the military, he was married before, and he had a child. So I literally took a chance after being single and building my military career, building my independence back, being that strong, tough woman. And I was single for almost 6 years. And then I met him and I was like, wow, this is possible. I can actually have a healthy relationship. And he got orders to leave, and we had 2 months notice. And so I had to move away from home, my career. I had been active duty full time in the military for almost 10 years. I gave that up to move away with him to a brand new city where we knew nobody. And he knew that I would go through this kind of identity crisis. I had no idea. And so once again, I was literally naked and afraid in a city. I knew no one, and no one would hire me because I was temporary. I was just a military spouse. I had lost and stripped that identity of that, that leader in the military with all these credentials and awards. And I just had to start fresh. And so once again, I spent some time alone, and I had to do the deep internal work. And, thankfully, my new part-time position in the military had put me through almost 2 years of coaching and emotional intelligence and diversity and inclusion and unconscious bias and learning and studying the brain so that I can facilitate and train other leaders. So I actually started this program 6 years ago in the military. So I kind of had to lead from within. I had to lead myself first. And that's really, I think many of us, once we start to realize we got to look in the mirror, we're no good to anybody else unless we can lead ourselves and get to know ourselves deep to the core. And it wasn't until then where I started to paint the picture of like, oh, that's how I can use this to help others. I can use my story, and I really do have a voice.
I do believe that the 4 sources of suffering are the things that are left unsaid, the things we lack permission to feel or say, the things we lack the words to articulate or understand, or the things that are left undone. My purpose in life is to allow my truth to give others permission to live theirs. But what does that mean? Every time I tell my story, every time you tell your story, we're giving people permission to feel and say things that they may not have felt otherwise. And we're giving them words in many situations to articulate and understand their own situation in a way that they've never potentially looked at, which gives them the ability to act and do. Right? It is such a powerful and beautiful thing. And not only is it freeing for us, does it eliminate suffering for us to vocalize these things, to release them, to process them, to talk about them, but the transference and transformation that can exist just by the power of our own stories being communicated to others is profound. It's real. And yet so many people minimize the value and impact of their story. How did you determine the value and worth of your story unique to you? And when did you start being able to communicate that externally?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that happened in this time frame. So once I got certified and I got all these credentials and I started studying and I started kind of like mustering up all of this stuff that had happened, and I was starting to understand what happened in my life and my body and my nervous system, and I wanted to share. I wanted to share more. And it was a boss, actually, that I was still looking for that validation. I was still looking for that chance, for that advocacy. And there was one time where I was kind of sitting, I was shrinking, and I'm like, okay, I'm just waiting for the opportunity for this person to accept that I am in this role, and they're going to help me, really cheer me on. And I was just waiting for that, and it never happened. And it wasn't until a conversation that happened, and he said, well, sounds like you have to get bigger elbows. No one's here to help you. No one's here to save you. And getting bigger elbows, like that was just, bigger elbows is the permission that I needed to just go. Because I was no longer looking for that to kind of come full circle with maybe the abandonment, is like, I was looking for that outside validation of like, hey, I'm worthy of sharing my voice, but I needed him to say that first. And he wasn't doing that. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to walk into places and spaces that I'm just going to keep leading from the front and from within and share the stories deep to my heart that I know that are going to make an impact. And they have made impact, and it does allow others to do the same. So that was a big piece of it. The second part was when I actually got a coach. She asked me some powerful questions. She said, you're without a job right now. I spent 6 months without a job, broke, trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do in a brand new city. And stripped of all of the everything that I had. And I was like, all right, I got to start from scratch. What can I do with what I've got? And, it really was value setting, value alignment of trying to put my purpose, my passion, how I'm going to continue to serve the community, the things that I've been through. And I had a blank page and I got to design it the way that I desired. And so I put my passion for love and fitness and community and connection that I so deeply desired. And so I started building communities and helping people achieve, their greatness through health and wellness and feeling happier and healthier. So that's really, in a nutshell, how I just said, hey, what can I do? And how can I live a life that I don't have to vacation from?
Well, I think it's really beautiful too to even look at the process and connecting in your life, right? When you go from 22, all of a sudden you're in a position where you're researching arthritis, you're alone, you're getting out of a toxic relationship. Fast forward to the level of safety and protection you created for yourself to be that strong woman, the leader that was in the business, right? Or in the military that was establishing a name and a voice and a brand for how you were going to lead. And then you meet someone, right? What's really interesting is you intentionally disrupted a lot of the foundation that made you feel safe and protected, because in this case, you felt emotionally safe and protected by someone else. And so it gave you the courage and ability to go explore these other uncomfortable areas, because that most intimate relationship is where you were seeking your strength. And it wasn't that you were seeking it through him. You'd established it in you, and he only helped connect and extend that further. The power and importance of what you've said so many times about the relationship with you has to exist first. That's beyond just understanding. That's beyond just awareness. That's also acceptance. That's forgiveness. That's understanding all of it. How many years did it take you to develop the skill set to really look at the holistic nature of self and to be able to establish that really solid foundational relationship with you?
I would say it probably took a good 4 or 5 years. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not a quick fix.
It's not.
And so, it really, I'm still working on it every single day. And, I still uncover pieces of myself that, I'm like, whoa, there's some work to be done there. And, we're never done. And so I think the more intentional and the more open a person is, the better off, the more vulnerable we can be, the more we share. I think there's so much power in sharing with others and getting in community. Even when it's scary, I built communities of women. I used to have pennies flipped at my head during lacrosse games because I was dating a guy in high school that the girls behind me hated, right? They didn't like that I was in this situation. So I had some mean girls. And so a lot of women don't trust communities of women. And so they don't feel like they can bring their full selves. And I'll tell you, it has been a game changer when you can really not only trust yourself, but trust others and really open up and be vulnerable. It's a game changer.
Well, to defend a lot of the women that feel that way, there's a lot of toxic shame that exists amongst women in society and towards women in society that makes many women feel that they can't be the woman, the mother, the professional, the whatever they want and whoever they want to be without fitting inside that box that you described earlier. It's like, if I did everything right, then everything was going to be okay. Right. And it is a self-protectionary nature. The concept of emotional intelligence is a really fascinating one. I believe that so many people, right, we call them empaths and others, who have a natural ability to feel things, see things, and understand things. My daughter, for example, I would tell you as an 8-year-old girl, might be one of the most emotionally intelligent people I've ever been around. And I consider myself pretty high on that list. How do you go about teaching emotional intelligence to people who have not felt for years?
So I help them really just look in the mirror and peace. Like I literally help meet them wherever they're at in that journey and say, okay, what are my values? What's my personality style? I train on temperaments as well. So for me, when I started understanding it, I didn't feel so awkward. I didn't feel so weird. I didn't feel so out of place. I actually started to accept my uniqueness as a gift and as strength. And so that's what I really love to help people do is see within themselves. Maybe they're an introvert. They're not going to be the one in the front row. They're not going to be that person that they're trying to be, active on social media and, making that come natural like it does for others, or having all the followers, right? And it's just, we tend to compare so much. And then there's blame and shame and guilt around that. And so what I really love to do, and the best thing that any of my clients have ever said is, Crystal, I'm falling in love with myself. I didn't even know who I was. And I have chills every time because like, I'm going to get emotional because it's like, when you can do that and you can look in the mirror and just say, this is who I am, and unapologetically love all parts of you, that acceptance, the forgiveness, all things, and just go after your dreams and goals and be in that true alignment is so powerful. But it's, to answer your question, it really has to be raw. It has to be just like, hey, you naked and afraid, and I walk that. And unfortunately, I've been there many times. We didn't even touch on the cancer. That again, it's like I've been in these moments where I needed that angel. I needed that person. I needed that guide. I needed that mentor, that support, that love, the warm hug, and the cloud of support. And so I just love to be that for other people, to help them walk through that journey.
I'm grateful that you have the strength to be able to provide that for others. It's, what I hear behind so much of what you said as well is the removal of shame and blame and being able to meet them where they are objectively and non-judgmentally. Why do you think it is that so many people struggle to get to the objective and non-judgmental state?
So I think many times there's a lot of unhealed trauma in themselves, that it's surface many times. And so it's just easy. It's easy for the brain. It's easy for the nervous system to be like, nope, shut off. And they don't understand where a lot of these reactions are coming from, which provides a lot of barriers to connection.
Yes. I think it's completely beautiful. We are so in alignment on so many things in the way that we view the world, the way that we teach, the way that we help others. I did say it in the intro and you just commented on it. We haven't even talked about the cancer yet. But, a lot of what we have talked about are kind of cancers to the soul. And so help us understand what your journey through the physical reality of cancer looked like and what it taught you.
I think the biggest thing it taught me is to never take life for granted. And each day is a gift. And we don't have time to wait. We don't have time to delay. I'll tell you, Dr. Google was my... Again, in 2019, which was most people's 2020, I Googled, a new mole on your arm that flakes over and scabs up. Try Googling that. You have 6 months to live. Life will flash before your eyes before you know it. Now, if the wheelchair didn't knock me down and crawl back up, this was going to do it. And so what I did learn is that I am not going to take any day for granted. I'm going to do is the best I can with what I've got. I'm going to move my body like my life depends on it, because tomorrow is never promised. And that's why, don't wait for an illness or an injury. And I've developed systems to be able to stay consistent, to keep putting myself and my health and fitness first, because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And the stronger you are, the stronger you are to the core, knowing who you are, why you're put on this earth, and that you're strengthening your body and your nervous system and your muscles. You never know. If you I'm a runner. I fall all the time. I trip on sidewalks, especially when I'm tired or having a rough day. I shuffle my feet. I have fallen, and I've never broken a bone. I'm 40 years of existence. I've never broken a bone, but I'm protecting, right? And it's almost like that protective mechanism is your system of non-negotiables, no matter what. Your fitness, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, your hydration, your nutrition, the movement, the relationships, the energy that you allow in. It has to be intact, and your system has to be ready for anything that gets thrown at you. And so don't wait till an illness or injury. It really has been the biggest lesson for me, just to keep going no matter what.
I find a healthy relationship with mortality is a game changer for most people. And unfortunately, an illness or an injury or some impact to a physical body is typically what sparks that for people. How are you helping people bridge the gap so that they don't have to wait for that experience and can lean into the lessons that you have already learned and are teaching?
Yeah, so I think many times people let life happen, right? And other people's priorities, other people's opinions, what I like to call the OPOs. I have lived it, breathed it, and so it held me back for way too long for me going after my dreams and goals and to have the voice that I have now. And so I see that so much in others of, letting life or roles that they play, not asking for help, other people's opinions, societal pressures, that keeps them from literally showing up and doing the work that they know they need to do for themselves and their health. And so a lot of excuses come out, right? And so me developing a system to be able to help break down some of these barriers, right? I try to take out as many excuses as possible by training on emotional intelligence, helping them understand that they have unique talents and they have a voice too. We have to set healthy boundaries. We have to have our own non-negotiables. The airplane, the safety briefing, I travel a lot, so I have to listen to it all the time. They tell us to put our own oxygen mask on first for a reason. Mm-hmm. We do that on the airplane, right? And we think about it there when we're traveling, but we don't think about it every single day. And so my goal, my mission in life is to really help people see that they are worthy of putting themselves first, even if it's just 34 minutes a day. And we have 1,440 minutes in a day. Everyone has the same amount of minutes. 34 minutes of that is 2%. 2% of your day. And when we can break it down like that, it's a lot more manageable. And then we're like, I could do 34 minutes. And then, it's like, okay, I could do that. And you string a bunch of those together, talk about emotional intelligence, the brain keeps track of the times that you show up for yourself and your health. And that builds confidence, and that motivation starts to creep in, and we get kind of addicted to that feeling of accomplishment. And then we start to trust and love ourselves. So I believe it really starts with that consistent movement and the momentum for you first, and then it will pour into everything else that you do.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. When was the last time you asked for help, and what was it about?
Good question. Gosh. Last night, my husband.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I actually cried in his lap last night. I had a little breakdown. I'm struggling a little bit. And so I host retreats for women. I love what I do. And a lot of times it doesn't happen in the timeline that we want. I
almost never
passion.
Does, by the way.
It never does, actually. But, this retreat that I have coming up in September, I'm just being completely honest, there's a couple spots that are left. I haven't broken even yet. And it's in 2 months. And he's like, you got to reach out for more sponsors. You have to and because that's what worked last time. But I'm like, no, I can reach these women. I know I can reach these women, but there's so many layers to investing in yourself. And we both met, we were both recruiters for the military, right? And so cold calling for me, I'm a relationship person, right? I want to meet, I want to connect. I'm not about cold calling and sending random emails. He's like, and I'm like, that's just not me, right? I don't want to do that. And he's like, I'll help you. And so we have a plan to work together this afternoon. But asking for help is really hard. But he has provided such a nice, safe environment for me to share that piece of me, because we're both building businesses and we're going a million miles a minute. And sometimes we have to lean on each other.
Thank you for your vulnerability and the real-time nature of your vulnerability to not only lean into the answer being last night, but bringing us real-time into your world. There are not many people that operate as transparently, as real-time as you just did. And it's something that I carry a great deal of respect for. So I just wanted to say, I really wanted to honor you for leaning into the question and giving real thought to it. The other piece that I will suggest, and I think it leads to my next question, because I think it's a very interesting dynamic. For someone who's always been a high achiever, who sounds like you've always delivered, who have always performed, right? There is always this integration between our present moment and whatever we determine is in the future, right? You still have 2 months left before this event, and it's crushing you in the current moment when a lot can happen in 2 months with intentional, aligned, aware action. How do you typically integrate between the present moment and your future state or goals and be able to regulate between those two? Because as you and I both know, the only thing that is real is what's right in front of us, this current present moment. It's also the only thing we have influence and control over. How do you integrate that gap?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is I have to remind myself. I have to constantly remind myself. And as I'm the tears, I'm like, he, of course, is there to remind me as well, because he's seen the depths of everything that's happened since I started this business. I have to remind myself that, you know, I am on the right track. I'm doing all the things that I possibly can. And, you know, maybe there is another way. Maybe there is, we can ask for help. Maybe there's something else that we can do. But I do have to look at the evidence. I went through my MBA, so just quick story. This is a strength of mine, is, you know, procrastination, perfectionism. I've always called myself an overachiever, but a recovering perfectionist. My MBA program, I went to school with my mom, actually. We went through an MBA program.
Interesting.
And she would vomit in the bathroom before our presentations. And I would go to happy hour and I would have a PowerPoint and I would walk in and present the information, because I just had this ability to just show up and put things together in perspective. I have this very strategic approach, but then I can dial it in. And that's been my strength at the last minute. And so it killed everyone. Like, they're like, how do you do that? And so what I did, unfortunately and fortunately, I've learned to do that because I'm a procrastinator and a perfectionist. I can work really well under pressure at the last minute. Yeah. I don't like operating in that space. However, there is evidence, longstanding evidence, that if I do push through at the last minute, I'm going to deliver. It's going to happen.
Because you've never not.
Yep. And the retreat that I had in May, I just did one in May, just before Mother's Day. And I actually got 2 sponsors 2 weeks before. And I was able to fill 2 more people, literally 2 weeks before. And I said I never wanted to do that again. But here I am again. I know there's evidence. However, it's not going to just appear. I have to do the work. I have to do what it takes. And it's not luck. And so this is a lesson for sure. I know that I'm here for it. I'm, putting other things in place for 2024. So still learning Beautiful. Every day.
Yeah. It's interesting because I teach this deep concept of surrender, right? And many people view surrender as giving up or not taking action or not doing those things. It's surrendering to the flow of life, surrendering to what's going to happen, what's meant to happen, surrendering to timing, surrendering to things that are way beyond my control. I laugh as you were talking about that description because my wife and I are partners in life. She's my partner in business, and she's a phenomenal COO and integrator, executor. Like, she brings all of my gifts and closes all the gaps and vice versa. But one thing that we both have shared always in common is what you just talked about. We've always had this guise that we're procrastinators, that we put things to the last minute, that we are always going to be under that pressure. However, to your point, the evidence in our life, in our business, in school, in relationships, in anything, is anything big we've ever attempted, anything we've actually focused on, anything we've applied our energy towards, it happens. But it's interesting because I'm not a structured, organized person that's going to do something 6 months ahead of time. That's not who I am. My creativity doesn't flow. My impact doesn't flow. And by the way, our retreat in May, we sold half of the seats with 10 days left to the event. Like in the last 10 days, we secured 3 sponsors. And so one of the things that I just share this with you from our own perspective, because I think this could be valuable for you, is the reality of it is if evidence supports that, and that's our natural cadence and flow in how we operate and how we create impact, then why does it need the label of procrastination and the shame and blame associated with that, when in reality, we always show up and we always deliver? So does it really matter when something gets done, as long as you have the faith that you know that what needs to get done will?
I love that. And that provides so much permission. However, I think as high performers, we see that as lazy or waiting to the last minute when you're not fully prepared. And so I think what happened to me last night was the human experience of
bingo.
Like, hey, just check yourself, really. I had a little pity party and I'm like, all right, let's go. And so we have a plan, but it can be a strength as long as you're supported. Because if you're alone,
yes,
that's not fun. And it wasn't until I shared that vulnerability with him that where we've been going a million miles a minute. Like we both travel. We're both building businesses separate. We always say, like, we wish we were together. But right now we have 2 separate missions, 2 separate branches, 2 separate bedrooms where our offices are in. And sometimes we don't meet until 11 o'clock at night where it's time to go to bed. And it wasn't until that moment where I had enough. I was like, all right, and so we have to remind ourselves of that. And so it's only in those vulnerable moments where the magic can really happen.
I tend to agree with that completely. You've talked so often about this constant evolution, right? There is no final destination. You're constantly doing this. What is one of the most recent ahas or understandings you've been able to extract in your own experiences and stories that you were blind to before?
I think the biggest, most impactful one, which I don't really talk a lot about, but maybe I'll share here. My husband and I both, we were in the military. We had these core values. We were very strong, independent leaders. We came together in marriage and, blended our families and, started these businesses. And it was during COVID that we actually put my stepdaughter, his daughter, in private school. And it wasn't until she started to ask, like, hey, why don't you guys go to church? I go to church, right? And so we had to find a home in a church, right? And so it wasn't until almost 2 years ago now, I think it was, when we found a home. And we talk about surrender, right? We realized that it really wasn't us all along. And so having that guiding light in that relationship with God has changed the game, not only for me in business, but us as a couple and as a partnership. And, I'm able to receive the gifts that I have and have the voice to be able to help impact others through my mission. And it's like, hey, if I don't share, if I don't show up, then I'm not obeying what I need to be doing. And so I think that's been the biggest recent lesson, where it's like, yes, I'm in the driver's seat and he is too.
Yeah. Beautiful. I really appreciate, again, your vulnerability and directness. What is the biggest problem that you're currently facing in life or business?
I'm still the best kept secret.
Okay.
That's the problem, right? I literally started speaking on stages just a couple years ago, and really getting my message out there. And I've built a global brand. I have a funnel of amazing programs and I've been able to impact so many women. The challenge is that a lot of my clients, they come through, it's a secret society, because I help so many people with their confidence and visibility and their emotional and physical health, that it's not the most popular thing to talk about on the internet. So it's like I've built this secret society and this beautiful community that it's still only 2% of the population that does this work, because it's so hard. And it doesn't have to be that way. And you don't have to feel so alone in the journey. And so I think that's been the biggest problem, is that I don't want it to be a statistic of only 2%. Why can't we be I shouldn't be the best kept secret. And the one thing that, same with you, what we do is just so special, and I want it for everyone.
I deeply appreciate that. And what I will tell you is that is not an uncommon feeling for some of the greatest world impactors that exists. And there's a lot of noise that's out there, and there's a lot of strategies and tactics that are being pushed out into the world, telling people that this is how you get your message out, this is how you grow your audience. And yet a lot of it doesn't work at the level that just being you, being vulnerable, and being authentic does. We are actually getting ready to launch in August a new program that is helping service-based entrepreneurs actually shift into expert digital marketers to create the consistency within their business, so that they're no longer the best kept secret. There have been a number of things that we've deployed, not only in our own business, but in the businesses of a number of our clients, that have generated wealth opportunities across the board and exposure, but it does continue to be a challenge. And so for someone who chased performance for connection and validation for so long, right? Growing a brand and doing things around social media and putting things out there can trigger some of those old performance memories that exist, the shame that's associated, and potentially not wanting to put things out there as boldly as maybe others would. How have you been able to remove that hurdle for you in your messaging, in your consistency, so that you're performing at the high level and taking the actions that you need to, but landing in a way that people are coming and gravitating into your world?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, actually during COVID, I had built my online business in 2017. And so when COVID hit, all the gyms shut down. And so I had freeconferencecall.com. That's how I got certified as a coach. And I, was building this online, moving all over. And so the gym shut down. My friend called me. She said, "Hey, you teach all these fitness classes everywhere you go, and you help people get communities together and help people run. Can you teach something online?" And I was like, okay, I know how to create a Facebook event. I went in Canva. I created the most horrible graphic you've ever seen in your entire life. It was bright pink and bright blue, and it had COVID, the amoeba on it, and as a germ-free, and I just created an event. And I had people on my freeconferencecall.com line. I didn't know what Zoom was. I didn't know what Facebook groups were. And I trained every single day at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day during COVID for men, women, children, dance camps,
Beautiful.
cheer camps. And I did it messy. And the first time I did it, it was sideways. I had no idea, because I didn't even have a voice on the internet. I was literally posting other people's quotes, and I would find pictures on the internet. I did not have my own thoughts until COVID. And I had to get a coach. And I remember ugly crying. She said, "Enough of the cute memes and other people's quotes. You have your own voice." And it wasn't until that I still have that video, because she is just such an angel. She challenged me, and she said, "You're not going to reach anyone with other people's quotes. You have your own thoughts. It's time." And so I just kept showing up twice a day, every single day. It helped hold me accountable. And remember, 2019, I had cancer, right? So I was just recovering. I had surgery in October of 2019. I wasn't even cleared by the doctors yet. But I stood up to serve in a way that the country needed me again. And I was like, I have to show up. And it developed a consistency. But I travel all over and my bags are always packed. So I carry around a tripod and I might do it barefoot from the side of a road, a parking lot, or I might be in the streets of Berlin or the beaches of Jamaica. I give a backdrop and I show up every single day, no matter what, whether I'm no makeup, hungover, tired, exhausted, traveling. I provide that consistency, and I've missed 2 workouts in the last 3 years. And so I provide a no matter what mentality, and I've been able to just show up as me. And that's been so liberating, and it allows other people to do the same.
Yeah, it's unbelievable freedom. Talk to us a little bit about what your retreats look like and what women could expect to get from attending.
Yeah, so it's a 6-day all-inclusive retreat in a mansion on the top of a mountain in Costa Rica. It's just such a magical place for you to unwind. It's called the Revive and Thrive experience. So a lot of times we are burnt out. We do for everyone else at the expense of our own health and wellness. So it's a really great reset to establish some healthy boundaries, healthy goals, rewrite some of the rules of emotional eating. And, you know, I teach fitness while we're there. We have yoga, there's meditation, there's adventures, and literally it's all inclusive once you're there. So you don't lift a finger, and you don't plan anything either. So this is for the woman that does everything for everyone. And you are literally treated like a queen. My team and I, we just fully support you. It's a 6-day all-inclusive coaching curriculum as well to take you through a journey to establish healthy habits, the next level version of you, set some goals, maybe in your business or in your fitness, and then you're supported afterwards. So it's a very intimate experience. And ladies have said that we've gone from strangers to sisters in 6 days. And as adults, doers, high performers, it's really hard to make adult friends that are like us and so that are going after the dreams and goals. So this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, it is a great way to do it. And I think the power of community that you've mentioned a number of times is real. And I do believe that those types of intimate settings can literally compress decades into days, right? People can walk out literally different people, more authentic versions of who they are when they're guided, facilitated, and have a safe, protected space to feel seen, understood, and connected. And I know that you're facilitating those spaces.
Absolutely.
Where in your life are you still serving others at the expense of yourself?
Ooh. Still in my business baby, right? And, you know, it's a challenge. There's a lot that my husband and I are growing. We have big goals and, you know, I make sure that I have my non-negotiables, my journaling, my workouts happen first thing in the morning, no matter what, but I'm still not working my own fitness program as 100% as I'd like to because I train. So a lot of times my own health and fitness, right, takes a back seat. And so I still struggle with that every day. And I know I need to be doing more. I want to be doing more. We're both perfectionists, so we're traveling. I partner with 5-star resorts now to be resident boot camp instructors at these resorts. So for my birthday, we're going to Punta Cana. And so literally in a month from tomorrow, we'll be on a beach. It's crunch time. So, you know, we always make sure we have something on the calendar to help keep us in check and accountable to our health and fitness. But it's not 100% right now. And, you know, we're our own worst critic. But that's where I'm at now. So it's crunch time in the next 30 days.
What is the legacy that you're going to leave?
I think the biggest one is just being the energy and being the light and the ripple effect of me paving the way and showing up no matter what and showing others what's possible and then empowering them to do the same. And so that's what I love to do, is to help women fall in love with themselves, see themselves as a role model, as a leader, as a CEO of their life, whether you're a man or a woman, but just see yourself in a light that you know you can make more impact and stop sleeping on your dreams.
Beautiful. I think that's about the best way to wrap, my friend. That was a beautiful closing thought from you. And I'm so grateful that you not only are you and show up in the world the way that you do, but that you invested the time with us today so that our audience can benefit from all of your wisdom, all of your experiences, and all of your lessons and work. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And for those of you that just watched Krystalore flip open her lid, she talked about elements from her childhood that she was blind to for years that ultimately ended up biting her at the age of 22. That profound shift from exiting a toxic relationship, starting to, for the first time, have a relationship with herself, created a pathway for deep understanding, ways to learn and grow, and this passion for helping others move from the dark to the light in their worlds. She really does help elevate and empower people, whether it's through being a professional belly dancer, through the historical work that she's done, through movement. She shows and motivates by example what is possible. And every single one of you have that same opportunity. You just have to be willing to flip open your lid and scan your can.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible. But to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com.